On this day in history, June 15th, 923, the Battle of Soissons occurs, where King Robert I of France is killed and King Charles the Simple is arrested by the supporters of Duke Rudolph of Burgundy. Included in the following is an excerpt from the 1944 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, going over the history of the city. Soissons, a city of France, capital of an arrondissement in the department of Alsace, 65 miles northeast of Paris by the railway to Lyon. Population from 1936, 19,971. Soissons is generally identified with the opium of Gallia Belgica, called Novio de Nome by Caesar. Novio de Nome was the capital of the Soissons, whose king, Divitiacus, had extended his authority beyond the sea among the Britons. In 58 BC, Galba, king of the Soissons, separated from the confederation of the Belgians and submitted to the Romans. At the beginning of the empire, Novio de Nome took the name of Augusta Soissonium, and afterward of that of Soissonia, and became the second capital of Gallia Belgica, of which Reims was the metropolis. The town had walls and a citadel, and became the starting point of military roads to Reims, Château-Thierry, Meaux, Paris, Amiens, and St. Quentin. Christianity was introduced by St. Crispin and St. Crispinian. In 297, their successor, St. Sinitius, became the first bishop of Soissons. After the barbarians had crossed the Rhine and the Meuse, Soissons became the metropolis of the Roman possessions in the north of Gaul, and on the defeat of Sagarius by Clovis in 486, the Franks seized the town. Not till the time of Clotaire II was the kingdom of the Soissons incorporated with that of Paris. Pippin the Short was at Soissons proclaimed king, and was there crowned by Saint Boniface, before being crowned at Saint Denis by the Pope himself. In 923, Charles the Simple was defeated outside the walls by the supporters of Rudolph of Burgundy, and Hugh the Great besieged and partly burned the town in 948. The communal charter of the town dates from 1131. The town suffered severely during the 100 Years' War. It was sacked by Charles V in 1544 and in 1565 by the Huguenots, who held the town for 6 months. During the League, Soissons joined the Catholics. In 1814, Soissons was captured and recaptured by the Allies and the French. In 1870, it capitulated to the Germans after a bombardment of 3 days. During World War I, Soissons was for most of the time just behind the Franco-British lines, but the German passed it in 1918 in their thrust for Paris, May 27th. It was retaken in the Franco-British offensive of July 18, 1918. In World War II, fierce fighting took place in the area, and the town was occupied by the Germans in June 1940. In the Middle Ages, Soissons was the chief town of a courtship belonging in the 10th and 11th centuries to a family which apparently sprang from the Counts of Vermandois. In 1625, the countship passed to the house of Thomas Francis of Savoy. In 1734, the male line of Savoy-Soissons became extinct, and the countship was ceded to the House of Orleans, which held it until 1780. Soissons stands on the Aisne, the suburbs of St. Vaast and St. Médard lying on the right bank. The Cathedral of Notre-Dame, partly ruined in World War I, was begun in the 12th century and finished by the end of the 13th century. There are still remains, though damaged, of the fine abbey of St. Jean de Vigny, where Thomas Becket resided for a short time. These include the ruins of 2 cloisters, 13th century, and the facade of the church with 3 portals, 13th century, the 2 unequal towers, 230 and 246 feet, of the 15th and early 16th centuries are surmounted by stone spires. The 13th century church of St. Leger, also damaged, formerly belonged to an abbey of the Genovefans. Beneath are 2 Romanesque crypts. Before World War I, a barrack occupied the Royal Abbey of Notre-Dame, founded in 660 for monks and nuns by Luther, wife of Huybron, the celebrated mayor of the palace. The number of the nuns, 216 in 858, the wealth of the library and manuscripts, the valuable relics, the high birth of the abbesses, the popularity of the pilgrimages, all contributed to the importance of this abbey. The wealthiest of all the abbeys in Soissons was that of St. Médard, founded about 560 by Clotaire I, beside the villa of Sagarius, which had become the palace of the Frankish kings. There Childeric III, The last Merovingian was deposed, and Pippin the Short was crowned by the papal legate, and there Louis the Pious was kept in captivity in 833. The abbots of St. Medard in Adelard's time were lords of 220 villages, farms, and manors. In 1530, St. Medard was visited by 300,000 pilgrims. The religious wars ruined the abbey, although it was restored by the Benedictines in 1637. Soissons is the seat of a bishop and a sub-prefect, and has a tribunal of commerce. Among the industrial establishments are iron and copper foundries and factories for the production of boilers, agricultural implements, and other iron goods, rubber goods, glass, and sugar. There is a large trade in beans, haricots de Soissons, and in grain for the provisioning of Paris.